Under the European Union clinical trial regulation, there are several procedures that the clinical trial sponsor can use in order to submit clinical trial application. And this is the mononational submission and the multinational submission. One has to be aware that, for example, if the clinical trial sponsor is very concerned about fast data acquisition and it's a first-in-human study, some European countries offer accelerated clinical trial evaluation timelines, which means that it is evaluated way faster than the typical multinational submission. So instead of 2 or 3 months of evaluation, you would get your approval as fast as 30 days. However, this also presents a challenge because, as you may know, under EU CTR, there are strict timelines under which the sponsor, the clinical trial sponsor, has to provide answers to the authorities if you have any questions. And if you have a reduced timeline of evaluation, of course, such timelines will be even shorter. So you really have to have a specialized team around you to help you to answer these kind of questions. Alternatively, the sponsor could also apply via the multinational clinical trial application route if it's a larger scale clinical trial. For example, let's just say you have 3 countries, then definitely you should go for multinational clinical trial application. However, for the multinational CTA, you also have some specifics. You could apply it fully, as in full application. You could have a mixed application, and you could have a staggered application. So the full application is when you submit part 1 for scientific evaluation and part 2 for national evaluation to all countries. The mixed application is when you submit your clinical trial application for the scientific evaluation for part 1, and then only specific countries for part 2, because, for example, you cannot collect all the documents on time to submit for the part 2. And the staggered application would be when you only submit to part 1, because you're still maybe deciding on the clinical size, you have clinical contracts pending, gathering documentation, and you could just submit for scientific evaluation, and then follow up once this is done with evaluation with the part 2 evaluation. And this really depends on the clinical development timelines. Sometimes sponsors have time to actually wait to gather the documents, whereas sometimes they just want to get their clinical protocol evaluated, clinical plan evaluated, and then answer all the questions, and then just focus on the national documentation.